Hi everyone, Jenny here again, and today I'm going to take you through another plant stake tutorial. This time we're going to be making a ladybird. So I'm starting here in the flame with a rod of red glass. I think this is carrot red that I have here. And you can use any red that you want to, obviously. We're also going to be using some black, and I've pulled some black stringer as well. I've got one thin black stringer and one thicker black stringer. I'm making the ladybird straight onto a 1.6mm piece of stainless steel rod or standard mandrel at the end there. So as you can see, right now I've brought the carrot red down into the flame and I'm just forming a gather. I'm also going to be using a press today. I'm using a brass crunch press. I'm only going to use the bottom half of the press, and I'm using a graphite flat press on top because I don't want both sides to be rounded. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I come to the pressing part. So as you can see, I'm still forming, it's quite a large gather that I'm trying to get here in the flame with the carrot red, and bringing the mandrel in, getting some heat into that now and transferring the glass onto the end of the steel rod or mandrel, and just wrap that around there and then flame cut off. And continuing now to rotate the rod in the flame, just centering that red glass onto the rod, forming a nice round gather with that. And I'm not using a tool here to round off, I'm just using gravity, and I'm going to be adding some black glass to this at some point in the near future. So I just want to get it as centered as possible. Remember, as I've said before, that when you are working on the steel, straight onto the steel, you do need to make sure you are keeping that heat in the glass, particularly as we continue on with the piece and we start working on the different components. It's very easy to forget to keep the body of the bead or the object that you're making warm. So the black now coming into the flame, and just keeping rotating in the left hand there with the mandrel with the red gather on it. And I'm going to form a slightly smaller gather of black. As you can see, just put the red back into the flame there just to get some heat back into it, and I'll continue to do that periodically. There I go again. So just into the back of the flame while I'm forming that gather on the black rod, and again angling that black rod on the diagonal backwards down away from the flame so that as I form the gather it falls back onto the rod. Another flash of the main body on the rod there into the flame, and when I think I've got a big enough gather I'm just transferring now, so just popping that black and adding it to the red that's already on the steel rod. Again, flame cut off. Now I'm playing the heat mainly onto the black glass here because I don't want to get everything too juicy and too liquid, and I want to try and keep as much as I can a slight separation of the two colours so it doesn't just form into one big mass of a red and a black. I want to see a little bit of a delineation there because when I come to press it, then that will give a slightly more of a bug shape to the body of the piece that I'm making. So whole thing into the flame now just to get some heat back in. Then I'm going to be getting ready to press in a second. I'm just using a bit of gravity there, so I've just angled down to let the glass fall a little bit so that I get a slightly more pointed base to the bottom of the ladybird when I come to press. So making sure I've got enough heat. Again, I'm just letting that rod drop. Sorry, my arm's in the way here. But I'm just hanging the rod straight down vertically and letting the red glass just fall a little bit and droop so that I get a slightly more pointed end. And again, back into the flame. So there's a few parts to the process with this. I'm getting the press ready now. So I'm going to use the base of the wide crunch. And the reason I do that is because it's semicircular, it's slightly rounded. So it just means, I'm just showing you here that you can see, if you can, that there's that slight concave or convex, I can never remember which is which, but to the actual brass, so that when I press the ladybird, so I'm just laying in now and I'm putting a flat graphite on the back. So the back of the ladybird is going to be flat and the front is convex, I think is the right word. There you go, I'm just showing you there. And that means that there's a bit more glass around the mandrel. Rather than just having a completely flat piece, it means that you've got that slight dome coming in towards the center where the glass is sitting on the steel mandrel or rod. And so that means it's just a little bit more safe around the rod there and a little bit less likely to crack. Remember, I think the adage when you're making a glass bead is you should have the width of the mandrel in glass all the way around to help stop cracking. Don't know if you've ever heard that one, but that was something that I learned a very long time ago. So I've just given this another quick press, and again keeping the heat in it because now it's flatter. We need to make sure that we're keeping the heat into the body. And of course I'm also taking out the chill marks from doing the pressing. And that's a bit of a juggling act because you don't want to get the glass too soupy so that it starts to flow, but you just want to take the chill marks out so you've got that nice smooth surface before you add the decoration. So right now I've got a red base and the black top, which is the head, and very shortly I'll be picking up the finer black stringer to add a center line. I'm just double checking the shape here at the moment. I think I'm happy with that. So here we go. There's the fine stringer now. Picked up the wrong one. And I always try and make sure that I've got a nice flat end on the stringer. So if you've got a ball of glass on the end of your stringer, just flash it in the flame, dunk it in your water pot so you get a nice flat end. And then I heat the body and then I just flash the tip of the stringer into the flame and then just lay it down. There you go. You see I've got a little ball on the end there, so I've just taken that off. Heat into the base. Lay that line down along the center, and I start at the bottom on the red glass and pull across the top because you can continue onto the black head that is already there because you can melt that in and you won't see it once it's done. And I'm just picking up a little tool here that I'm just going to press the end down. There we go. So now picking up the slightly thicker stringer. And again, just keeping the heat into the body of the bead. Taking my flame down just a touch and starting to add some dots. So symmetrical either side of that center line. I think I'm adding 3 on each side in a sort of triangular pattern. And then once the dots are on, try and make sure that they're all roughly the same size. You may need to add a little bit of glass or take some away from your dots if they're not quite the same size. And then just get that heat back into the body of the ladybird. Okay, so just taking a little bit of time here just to slowly melt them in. Sometimes I will also take it back to the press and press again just to assist. There we go. So just taking it back to the press and pressing down again just to assist those dots to flatten them down. And again back into the heat. So the next step, once this is done, will be to add the eyes. So I will be using a white glass and then the stringer of black again, just to add the eyes. So I'm actually using a full rod of white here, not a stringer, because I want a fairly good dot of white for the base of each eye. And I can still see in the flame where that center line is, so it just gives me a good guide for where I'm going to place the base of the eye. So just heating the end of the white rod and then just touching down on one side, pulling away, flame cut. Keeping the rod fairly upright, did a little bit of a rotation there, but just to try and let that rather large dot settle. And then going in for the second one. So again, just forming that very small gather on the white rod, touch down, let it set up. Obviously using white is a little bit more juicy, but what I love about white is obviously you know when it sets up because it starts to go opaque rather than transparent. So there's the two eye bases, and it looks like maybe one's slightly bigger than the other, so I'm just adding a little bit more glass onto the smaller one there and melting that in. Again, a quick eyeball, having a look there. Do I think it is enough? Yep. So in my hand now I've got my graphite tool. I quite like this one. I actually was given it by a friend, and I love that it's got this sort of triangular shape to it, so it's quite a useful tool. I have no idea where she got it, so I'm afraid I can't assist with anybody who thinks it looks like a good tool and would like to have one. But yeah, have a look around at some of the suppliers if you think that there might be something that you would find useful. So I've just gone in and flattened down the dots. Again, a little bit of heat into the body there. And we're nearly there. So just keeping the heat in, picking up the slightly thicker stringer that I used earlier for the dots on the body. And I'm just taking the torch flame down again a little bit. Again, a little bit of heat there. And we're going to add the eyeballs with the black. And I like to play around with the placement of the eyeballs. So sometimes I'll do both eyeballs looking to the left, sometimes to the right. Sometimes I make my ladybird boss-eyed. And sometimes I will have them one at the top and one at the bottom. So you can play around and make your ladybird look a little bit quirky with how you position the eyeballs. Heat into the back. Again, I can't stress enough that you really must keep the heat in when you're working directly onto the steel. So just remember that you've got that difference in the rate of contraction between the cooling of the steel and the cooling of the glass. And so, you know, you want to keep that even heat through as much as you can through the making of the piece before popping it in the kiln. And there you go. I think she is done. And Ladybird, Ladybird is flying away home. Thanks ever so much for watching, guys. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like and comment below.